This episode of Inside Golf Podcast is brought to you by Inside Sports Network.
What's up, everybody? It's your boy, Boston Capital Twitter, Steve, on the Hold the Green podcast.
All right, we are live. Tap in, birdie.
All right, Carson Young is here.
I bet Ludwig at 28.
Let's go. I bet
You
him
did
at,
too?
I bet him at 25.
Low sevens. I think there's some guys in here we like.
Harris English at 7,300.
I love Brian Harmon at 3.5% this week.
Good evening, everybody. Welcome to Hold the Green. Thanks for joining me. Just me tonight. Steve Shermer, under the weather. So having to go late tonight with the end of the Sony Open and the end of the Rams Bears game. Not ideal for this guy, but hey, I'm here. We'll go over the three courses tonight for the MX. Boston Capper, not quite under the weather, probably feeling pretty good about his Patriots getting past CJ Stroud and the Texans and proving him Capper right about how bad of a quarterback Stroud is. I'm sure we will talk about all of that on Tuesday. But congratulations to them. Congratulations also to Chris Goddard winning the Sony Open in going away fashion. Great performance by him. We talked about on the Sunday preview show how guys are starting to attack Wiley a little more with the driver, with the ability to go over all the dog legs. And you saw that on full display on the back nine from Goddard. Some monster drives that end up in the fairway, which was really key this week because they did grow up the rough a little bit. It was really tough to play out of the Bermuda. So, but he gets the win. Great start by him, picking up right where he left off. President's Cup seems like it will be in his future if he continues this play. Was very relevant at the Open. Well, I mean, Scotty made everybody irrelevant at the Open last year, but Goddard did very well at that major last year. We'll see what the rest of the year brings for him. We'll talk in terms of we'll debrief maybe a little more about Sony on Tuesday. I think the only couple of things I want to touch on before we get to the MX is if this truly is the last of the Hawaii swing for the PGA Tour, at least Wiley went out fighting. We got some wind, we got some firmer conditions once the wind kind of dried up all the greens after Thursday. Course played pretty tough, played about as tough as what it did, or not quite as tough as what it did in 2020, but it was the toughest it had played up until today, over there Friday and Saturday. So that'll be a shame if we don't go back to Wiley. Yes, it's definitely a course that is quickly becoming obsolete based on length and the ability to just bomb drives 350 yards, as you saw today with Goddard. But it's also a shame too, because we are going to be taking one more golf course away from the PGA Tour that is all Bermuda. And you think that, with how popular golf is in the Southeast and Florida, and how so many guys play on Bermuda growing up, that we really don't have a whole lot of golf courses played on the PGA Tour with full Bermuda. And that is a stern test, play on Bermuda. I know that I'm going to go to Florida in a couple weeks and play on my dad's all Bermuda course. And I went to the driving range, over the weekend, hit it really good. I know I'm going to be booning around and chipping it over greens because I can't help Bermuda. And it just is different playing on it. It's different putting on it. And because of just this obsession with overseed, which we're going to see this week, had a tournament that, frankly, I don't think should exist anymore. We don't see these guys tested on tight lie Bermuda or putting on fast, crispy, grainy Bermuda greens anymore. It's very few and far between at this point. So if this is the last of the Sony, tip my hat to you, pour one out. As far as betting wise goes, I mean, I had a couple guys in the mix heading into Saturday. Matt McNeely and Vince Whaley just crapped down their leg. As far as everything else goes, I mean, I got off to a great start of the round scores. Had a really good Thursday. Ben some unders. Our boy Mexico City in the Discord, and that's definitely a reason why you might want to become an annual subscriber to ISN, you get access to the Discord where you can see all the great takes from guys like Mexico City and a bunch of other really sharp guys in Discord who took down DFS contests and did very well this week. He gave us a little tip about the weather over in Dubai. We cleaned up on some round scores there, and then it just went downhill from there. Bat had a bit of a bad run on Friday, thanks to just SH Kim and Brian Harmon just draining a bunch of putts. And anytime you bet overs on guys and they decide they want to hit multiple 25 footers for par, probably not going to win. And then today I got it right. Pound the unders. I just picked a bunch of bumps. So fortunately, I get to cool off a little bit. It was a little tilted based on what happened, but listen, a lot of winners this week at ISN, thanks to a lot of tools that we have on the website this year, not just with the live odds board that shows guys are getting steam where they started, like their closing line. Also, we got some projections for DFS that did very well this week. Really helped a lot of subscribers. So definitely a reason you want to become an ISN member to get access to all that. All right. As you can tell, because I'm not feeling all that great, we're going to zoom through this. Andy did his preview as well. I mean, I've been talking about this tournament for 7 years at this point. There was some big changes last year to one of the courses that we'll go over and how that impacted the tournament. But this is the 2026 preview, the Amex, a very strong field this week. You got Scotty in the field, which did make, I was looking at people commenting about what the DK odds were. And apparently there's some absurd prices out there because just Scotty is an overwhelming favorite and just pushes everybody down. But we got a lot of other top players playing. It's going to be a really good tournament. Probably a good tournament to bet without Scotty Marcus. Although, you know what, though, with how the other two golf courses are and how they play, we'll see what happens with that. But this is Alcatraz. This is the 17th hole. Probably looks very familiar to everybody. Probably the most infamous hole at this the stadium course this week. Probably because the PGA Tour loves putting together highlight packages of guys just kind of screwing up this hole. I know I've had some very famous blow-ups happen on this hole that ruined some outrights, but it also looks very similar to what you might see at TBC Sawgrass. And that was the point of this golf course. It was supposed to be built as a sequel to TBC Sawgrass. It was going to be the Sawgrass of the West. So Pete Dye came in 1986, opened it up, and this was going to be part of the Bob Hope Classic, which is what this tournament used to be. Well, everybody complained about this golf course. It was too hard, and they didn't want to play it anymore. So it ended up getting dropped from the rotation. But I believe back in 2016, I think that was the year Jason Duffner won. That was the first time they brought this course back after some renovations. Plays a little more fair now. Over time, it definitely started to become way too easy for these guys. But they ended up making some changes last year to at least, briefly toughen it up. And we'll get to that in a little bit. But they also play two other courses that we'll get to in a little bit. So let's talk about the restorations to PGA West, the stadium course, over the last couple of years. So it's been in a couple stages. Stage one was the removal of over 200 trees on property. Just open up the vistas of the golf course, make it a little more wide open. That was number one that they did. But last year was a very significant change. They rebuilt all the bunkers. They enlarged them back to their original size. We see a lot of golf courses when they restore some greens over time, they shrink from the edges. They ended up restoring them to their original size here. Bunkers were reshaped. They have more flatter bottoms than before. That makes it a little more difficult, when, you got a really not a whole lot of sand maybe underneath to work with, being on the bottom there. They kept the original contours. The greens were largely intact, and that definitely impacted scoring last year because these were all new greens. And anytime you have all new greens in the desert, they're already going to be firm. Well, they played mega firm last year, and that definitely impacted the scoring. But overall, though, 7,200 yards, par 72. Now the green sizes have been expanded to 7,000 square feet. So relatively large. Average fairway width about 30 to 35 yards. Agronomy. This is ryegrass season. Overseeded ryegrass tees, fairways. It's very popular in the West. I mean, it's popular in a lot of places in the Southeast during the winter months to overseed a golf course to make it look aesthetically pleasing. They do it especially in the desert because Bermuda goes dormant and people don't want to look at brown grass. Now, you still will see a little bit of that brown grass this week, well off the fairways where they don't overseed, but you'll see like the emerald green overseed for most of it this week. The overseeded ryegrass rough is only 1.5 inches. The non-overseeded tip green Bermuda is 2, but it's dormant, very easy to hit out of. And then Poa Trivialis overseeded greens. So other overseeded greens on the PGA Tour, you got TPC Sawgrass, Scottsdale, Innisbrook. Starting in 2024, Memorial Park Golf Club, TPC San Antonio, Quail Hollow. There's probably a couple others I have not that escaped my recollection, but a lot of overseeded greens this week. I think we've probably moved past the point of what overseeded Bermuda means. People understand that it is basically a different grass at this point. It's not just more Bermuda on these greens. So I talked about some of the similarities. Maybe I'll show you a couple of pictures for some highlights of the stadium course. This is hole number 1. And this is pretty much what you see a lot of at the stadium course. So you got, a 30, 35 yard wide fairway. There's some subtle land movement here where you might not get a completely flat lie. Framed on each side by mogul mounds. That's a very popular feature on some die courses. You got some interesting features around the green here. This is basically what you get at a lot of and mostly at this course. You also have the huge bunker that is left of the 16th green. The story behind this is they were building the 16th hole, and Pete Dye allegedly tapped his bulldozer driver on the shoulder and said, "I want you to just start digging until you hit water." And apparently he started digging, and about 18 feet later, finally found a little bit of water. This is also going to be a popular feature this week where they will shove this down your throat because a lot of guys will end up in this bunker on the left of the par 5 16th. It also was the scene last year of a rather humorous, maybe not humorous, but maybe tragic occurrence to rookie William Mao last year, who had a hell of a time trying to get out of this bunker. So he put them in the bunker in 2, hits it over the green in 3, back in the bunker in 4, couldn't get out on 5, couldn't get out on 6, ends up splashing out to the front of the green on 7, goes all the way, and then he goes all the way back in for 8, over the green 9, 10, 11, and finally he gets a 13. So if you've seen the highlight package of this, I think Robert Dameron was literally scolding him for making really stupid decisions on this hole. But yes, this can happen to people on this hole. It's, par 5. You absolutely need to score in this hole because there's a lot of birdies at this place. But this is an example of where this might be able to get away from you. There also is a lot of die templates on this course that makes it look a lot like Sawgrass. Here's an example right now. The 9th at PGA West Stadium has a long, narrow bunker going all the way down the fairway with water right. Greens canted angled this way here. And it looks very similar to the 5th at Sawgrass. Again, like long, narrow bunker going all the way down. Water to the right here. The fairway bows a little bit where you got to hit less than driver. You see a lot of holes like this that look like a lot of holes at the stadium or at Sawgrass. The 18th hole at the stadium course is basically a carbon copy of the 18th hole at Sawgrass, where it's just a 450 yard par 4 with water all the way down the left. You just have to nut up and just hit a really good golf shot down the stretch. And then obviously you got the 17th that essentially Alcatraz, because it's flanked by all the rocks here, is really just a mirror image, a longer version of the 17th at Sawgrass, but it's essentially the same hole. So, it's fine. it played tougher last year because of the new greens, so that added a little bit of intrigue to it. But unfortunately, over the last couple of years, as just technology has gotten better, this turned into a birdie fest, especially in dome conditions, to join the other two in the rotation. I probably would expect this year. Maybe scoring doesn't get quite to what it was a couple of years ago. Usually these new greens take about a couple of years to settle. But I would expect with not a whole lot of weather adversity this week, these guys are probably going to pick this place apart. You also got the other two courses. This is the Nicklaus course, designed by Jack Nicklaus in 1987. Again, a par 72 golf course, average green side, 4,700 square feet. Now, they have done some changes to the greens over the last couple of years. I know they resodded the TIFF Eagle. That doesn't matter because it's overseeded, so that's a moot point. But those greens have settled by now, so there's no issues as far as firmness and, making it tougher than what it would be. Similar fairway widths, about 35 to 40 yards wide. Again, ryegrass overseed, 1.5 inches for the ryegrass, not overseed, it's 2 inches. Exact same agronomy as the stadium course. And honestly, it looks very similar to the stadium course. Again, you got a 35 to 40 yard wide fairway. It is flanked by mogul mounds everywhere. Looks very similar to the stadium course, but it's way more like straight away. Whereas the stadium course, it's not quite as, you do have to, it's not quite as plotting as Sawgrass, but you do have to kind of plot your way around and club down some holes based on just how the holes are shaped. Here, though, there's not really a whole lot of deterrent to taking driver at a lot of these holes. Everything's really right in front of you. A lot of these bunkers can be carried off the tee by anybody. Same thing with the 14th here. Again, like this is only 265 to the middle, maybe about 285 to carry. Very wide fairway here. It just no hazards around the green. This is why this has turned into a very easy golf course, kind of embarrassingly easy course that these guys play every single year. And everybody gets one crack at it in this tournament. And then finally, La Quinta, which is way off property. Designed in 1959 by Lawrence Hughes. It was renovated by Damian Pascuzzo in 1999. Again, par 72. Average green size about 5,500 square feet. Average fairway width 30 to 35 yards, so a little narrower. Ryegrass overseed again, though. The rough is only 1 3/4 inches. There's no dormant Bermuda on this one, though. It's all ryegrass overseed. Poa trivialis ryegrass overseed as well. And it looks very dissimilar than the other two courses. This one looks like kind of a watered down Waialae. In my opinion, very flat. You just got a bunch of tall palm trees. That's really the only place you got to aim at. But it's a very, I'm sure the members love this place. I'm sure it's in great condition. Gonna be honest, when the PGA Tour, I don't like ripping on courses anymore. I don't know. I think that's kind of played out. I will not miss this tournament once the PGA Tour starts after the Super Bowl, especially because I will not miss having to just put through 2 rounds, seeing everybody play Nicklaus and La Quinta. Because as the scoring, which I'm going to show you right here, it's embarrassingly low. These guys tear this place up. They should not be playing Nicklaus or La Quinta anymore. If anything, they probably should just do what they did in the COVID year. If you really want to have the Pro-Am, because this is the Bob Hope Classic and you want to hold on to tradition, so I get that. Play the Pro-Am over the first 2 days. 1 round at Stadium, 1 round at Nicklaus, so you split everybody up. And then you get rid of Nicklaus for the weekend. You just play stadium course the rest of the time. Because while at the stadium course last year, the first couple rounds played around par because you had the weaker wave going through those. A little stronger players played it in round 3 where the scoring average went up, and played a little, played just under 1.5 strokes under par in round 4 after the cut. Before that, though, the stadium course, it was playing, minus 3.7, minus 3.32, minus 3.6 in 2023 in the final round. So And the round 3 is when you always see the strongest wave hit the stadium course. So that's really kind of a true representation of how tough it is or how not tough it is. So I would expect these scoring averages to start trending back closer what they were back in 2024 and 2023 at the stadium course as the greens start to settle a little bit. But you can see with the Nicklaus tournament course, and I remember when I first started doing this back in 2018, where the for DFS purposes for Showdown, you just wanted to pick on La Quinta because that was the easiest course. And you could see that, over the years, like, in 2022, La Quinta played easier than Nicklaus. Historically, that was the one to target. Well, over the last couple of years, though, Nicklaus has played just as easy as La Quinta. So that adage is out the window at this point. You want to pick on both courses, to be completely honest. And when you're seeing these guys, like the average score is -4, like for all 3 days, I think the lowest I have seen at these, I think was -4.36 at Nicklaus and La Quinta or around there. I'm wondering because of the really strong field we have this year at both courses, we might end up seeing maybe -4.5, especially because the weather looks like it's going to be just dome conditions. If anybody was really annoyed at all my incessant weather updates and posting traffic cams, like I was like somebody commented, trying to solve a crime. You'll be seeing me do a lot less of that this week because there just really isn't a whole lot of weather to worry about at this place. And that's why these guys really tear it up. If we get some wind, maybe some cold, that could bring down the scoring a little bit. I actually had a couple of notes I left myself last year, specifically with La Quinta, oddly enough. One was if it's pretty chilly in the morning, it's definitely can hurt you at La Quinta a little bit. So that might be something maybe shy away from for like Showdown and everything. And also too, traditionally the guys who win this tournament are usually the ones that play the best in La Quinta. So even though La Quinta is definitely easy to ignore, check out the course history at La Quinta before you pick your outrights, because that seems to be the key to actually winning this place. Is you got to shoot 65, 64, 63 if you want a chance to win this tournament at La Quinta, because if you blow that opportunity, it's a detriment to you, and it's getting to the same point in Nicklaus. So, it's something to keep in mind. All right. There's no shot link data at Nicklaus or La Quinta. So everything from here on out, with the exception of a couple of things, will be just stadium course. As far as difficulty off the tee, about middle of the road. Like I mentioned, it's not quite as plotting as Sawgrass is, but some of the tee shots are a little awkward, where you kind of have to club down, play positional golf. There's definitely some holes where you just bomb it straight away. But PTI courses never usually are the easiest to drive. So, and you see that a little bit here. But the biggest differences though is, with the exception of last year where, the greens are really firm. If it's dome conditions, like the approach shots are really easy. It was one of the easiest in 2023 and 2024. Though, because I'll get to the proximity buckets in a little bit. There's a lot of shorter irons at this tournament. There are some hazards around some of these greens too that make the approach shots a little not quite as straightforward as like Nicklaus or La Quinta, but there's a lot of shorter irons, and when there's not a lot of wind, these guys just pick this place apart. Around the green, it's interesting to see how this course has kind of evolved over the last couple of years. So this used to be, at least with getting up and down from the fairway and the rough, used to be one of the easiest in the PGA Tour. And a lot of that had to do with the overseed, because it's very easy to get up and down with that. What I've noticed is the difficulty has slightly increased relative to other years, getting up and down from fairways and rough versus what it was in the past. And my theory is, and I've noticed that this tournament seems to get a kind of just slightly warmer and warmer as far as the temperatures every single year. And what that does is once the temperatures start warming up, some of the Bermudas start popping up a little bit. And when that happens, some of the grass can be relatively inconsistent to chip off of. So I think that's why it's gotten a little more difficult over the years in those respects, because I think Bermuda is starting to come up a little more and more often than what it used to. It's not the hardest place, but just something to keep in mind. It's not as easy to get up and down from those areas of what it was. But the bunkers, though, are some of the toughest to get up and down on PGA Tour. I mean, Pete Dye always had a place for a bunker. There's a reason why bunkers replace certain places. You never want to be in them. And also, too, like, you know, the big bunker left of the 16th hole obviously is very difficult to get up and down from. So one of the tougher bunker places on the PGA Tour. As far as putting, though, again, last year, just because of the new greens, they were a little tougher to putt on. But the last 3 years, though, one of the easiest. So really with the stadium course, as far as difficulty, if you do get some poor weather, kind of like what you saw in 2021, you know, it definitely becomes a little more of a tougher ball striker test, but you get some easy years like 23 and 24. It's pretty relatively defenseless, as you saw with the scoring averages. All right. As far as like driving statistics go, there's not a whole lot of penalty from missed fairways, again, because very low rough. The dormant Bermuda doesn't pose much of a challenge. Again, you see one of the lowest penalties for hitting in the rough in the PGA Tour. You definitely can. There's some opportunity to get in trouble off the tee. There are some water off some of the fairways that you can drive it into. So that can be a little difficult. As far as driving statistics go, you know, there are some holes where you do have to club down. I know number one, that's usually a less than driver hole for a lot of these guys. You know, the average drive at this place is only about 288, 289. So it's not quite bombs away at the stadium course, but you know, it shows in the average driving distance numbers here. Proximity buckets. So this is available on Data Golf, obviously. You can see the stadium course. And like I mentioned, there's a lot of short irons at this course. I mean, I do admire the stadium course for the fact that, like, you know, Pete Dye, just like at Sawgrass, you know, it's a pretty evenly distributed set of approach shots you got to hit. You know, I mean, like here, you know, every proximity range for the most part, you know, it's, you know, 15% from under 100, 12% from 100 to 125, 13% from 125 to 150, 18 from 150 to 175, 13% from 175 to 200. You know, it's not like you go to some places where it's just like 100 to 200 yards or, you know, pretty big concentration of over 175. Relatively even distribution top to bottom. But obviously you have to account for the other two courses. So what I've done is, and I showed this last year too, I went ahead and just estimated what Nicklaus and Quinta was, and now you have a composite of what the proximity buckets would be at this tournament. So, and they're relatively the same at Nicklaus and La Quinta. In fact, like as far as like what they're over average on the PGA Tour and under average, it's the same at both courses. So both Nicklaus and La Quinta have about a 22% rate of shots under 100 yards. That's much higher than PGA Tour average. So overall, though, it's a ton of shots from under 100 yards at all three courses in the tournament. It's kind of a dead zone between 100 and 150, mostly because of what is seen at La Quinta and Nicklaus, and plus that just isn't a very popular range at the same course either. So only about 20% of your shots are going to come between 100 and 150. There is a pretty high concentration of shots between 150 and 175. There are a fair amount of par threes that are in this range on La Quinta and Nicklaus. And there just is a fair amount of these like 450 yard par fours or 440 or so, where you do see like, you know, like a lot of these ranges here. That's theoretically what your approach shot would be. So it's a higher concentration there. And then there's a pretty high concentration of shots, 200, 225. I know that Quinta has 3 par threes. They're between 200 and 225 yards. That contributes to that as well. Also, the par fives are really short at Nicklaus and La Quinta. So instead of seeing them more in the 225 range, it might be pushed more to 200, 225. So overall, though, you know, it's a high concentration of shots under 100 yards, kind of a dead zone between 100 and 150. High concentration of shots between 150 and 175, and then a relatively higher concentration of shots between like 200, 225, and not so much 225 plus, but stadium course definitely makes up for it in the overall composite here. And then just as far as just like comp courses and correlated skill sets, I just summarized a couple comp courses per data golf based on like their predictive skill set chart. So it's a lot of like driver, wedge, driver, putter type comp courses like Memorial Park, like Quail Hollow, Cays Valley, like those types of players would do like driver putter types kind of do pretty well at the stadium course. There's a pretty high correlation of driving distance to your total strokes gained at the stadium course relative to other places. As far as the predictive skill set chart, some other comp courses, Quail Hollow, Cays Valley, those are the ones listed, on Data Golf there. Nicklaus tournament, relatively similar though, kind of a similar skill set chart as what you see at the stadium course here. Like you see course like TBC Scottsdale and Craig Ranch, TBC Boston, Castle Pines, those types too. The difference though is La Quinta though. Those are more the courses where just driving just doesn't really matter at these ones. Like you're similar to like what you saw like Waialae. Like a lot of these comp courses to La Quinta are similar here. Like, your Pebble Beaches, Summerlin, Hamilton Golf Country Club, those types of places. Doesn't really seem to favor longer hitters or shorter hitters. Although at La Quinta, there definitely is an opportunity to cut off some of the dog legs and hit it over the trees like you saw at Waialae. But overall, though, like none of the bunkers are really in play at La Quinta off the tee. So it doesn't really favor a whole lot. It basically just turns into just a giant putting contest, which a lot of people are going to say this week. It's especially true at La Quinta and Nicklaus. If it's really easy conditions for weather-wise, stadium course probably going to turn to that as well. So, not a very interesting preview. Probably would be a little better if my co-host was here, but I had to get through this. So yeah, that's it. So thank you everybody for joining me tonight. Boston Capper will be back on Tuesday, where maybe we'll unpack a little more about Sony. We'll definitely talk about his Patriots. He is going to be insufferable for the next couple weeks, especially because they will. Well, you know what? He shouldn't get too cocky about just assuming that Denver's going to roll over, because they kind of got a horseshoe up their ass too. But we'll have him on Tuesday. We'll talk about our best bets for this show. So yeah, thanks for watching. Thanks for joining us. Thanks for staying up late with me tonight. We'll see you on Tuesday.